it's difficult to envision a situation where the US dollar would collapse against other currencies. You understand? If it collapsed against, say, European currencies or the Japanese yen and so forth, then maybe there would be pressure on the US to actually tighten by the international holders of government bonds in the US. That could be essentially the case. But the other central banks do the same. They also print money. And so what we will have is a depreciation of paper money overall in the world, not just in the US, but overall, people who hold cash. When I grew up in my grandfather's household, what was safe is to hold cash with a bank. Nowadays, to hold cash is not safe because your deposit rates, say 6 months deposit rates in the US are less than 0.5%, and the inflation, as the government publishes, is more than 4%. So you have negative real interest rates of more than 3.5%. But this is what the government is publishing. The reality is that the inflation at the present time, and I'm not saying it will continue forever at this rate, it may accelerate, it may come down, but at the present time, inflation in the US, depending on your situation in life, is being, say, between 4.5% to 10%, in my view. They steal, they expropriate honest people's savings by implementing zero and less than zero interest rates.
So what is it going to take for the masses to start seeing the central banks as the villain in this story?
Well, I think a lot of people see them already in an unfavorable light, but you have to understand. In academia, let's say you're a professor at the university. The question is, you want to keep your job or you want to get sacked? You want to keep your job, shut up and just accept. You're an employee of the Federal Reserve. Better shut up. Don't expose anything that could be wrong. You're working for Chase Manhattan Bank or JP Morgan or whatever it is. Shut up. The best nowadays in the current job situation that we have and in the current politically correct atmosphere, just shut up. Because if you expose the villains and you tell the truth, they're gonna shut you up. A lot of academics have been sacked because they made some remarks that were inconvenient to their colleagues. And in academia, in business, we have business rivalries and so forth, and people compete with each other. But in academia, there is much more jealousy among the people sitting at the university. They all hate each other. They hate each other. Today's economists, how many economists have you heard recently quote David Ricardo, Adam Smith, Schumpeter, or even a more recent economist like Milton Friedman, who argued for freedom and capitalism and small governments and free to choose? They never quote him. They hate him because he argued for small governments and for the government to stay out of the way of the economy. It's a disaster. The level of economics in terms of sophistication, unlike, say, mathematics and physics that have made huge strides forward over the last 30 years, in economics, we've gone back to practically the Stone Ages.
Okay. So we've got a regressive academic environment that is ruled by the tyranny of the majority here. And I've got to think we also have on the business side, the corporate side and the political side, we have the powerful players who are making tons of money from their unfair advantage right now, feeding from the trough, and they don't want the system to change, correct?
No, they don't want. This is a perfect system for academia. They can be incompetent at the Fed. Then they leave the Fed, then they advise a hedge fund, and that's it. And they earn much more. Or they write a book by a ghostwriter.
Yeah, it's that revolving door.
And I can tell you,
Ben Bernanke going to Citadel.
I know several former Fed employees, Fed voting members. Larry Lindsay, he was sacked by Greenspan in the late 1990s because he opposed to the easy monetary policies.
Love to hear your thoughts on them. And then, are there any other asset classes that you think provide a safer haven for capital than the traditional cash, obviously, but even maybe equities and whatnot at these high prices?
Well, I wished it was as simple as you pointed out, Adam, but the complication arises that with the current policies, the government will sooner or later run kind of out of money, you understand? And then you have to take the money from somewhere and get the financial conditions again in good order, certainly compared to other countries. And so the taxation will go up. You understand? That is usually
Absolutely.
Step one, printing money. Step two, the people that enjoyed the money printing, you start taking away something. So you have sort of a wealth tax, or you impose duties. The way the political system has been in the US, all tax increases have fallen on the middle class and the lower middle class and the poor people. It never falls on the 100 richest families. The tax cuts always benefit the 100 richest families, and the tax increases hurt the poor people. So, but in future that may change, you understand? We have huge political changes, not just in the US, but elsewhere, and we have these lefties and so forth. So I wouldn't rule out that it will become quite bad. Say, I have assets, okay. I have assets in real estate, I have assets in precious metals and in some stocks. Because in Europe, if I can get companies with a dividend of 3-4% and the cash has a negative yield, then the companies with a 3-4% yield over 10 years will go up by 30% if everything stays more or less the same, whereas cash will lose value. Anyway, and I have also precious metals that I said, real estate, stocks, and some bonds. I have high yield bonds in emerging economies. But my concern is that one day the government will come and say, well, Mr. Faber, first of all, maybe you have too many assets. We need to take something away from you. So we'll take 50%. And number two, Mr. Faber, I think it would be good to send you to a re-education camp, so that you can be in peace and rethink the world according to our socialist ideologies.